I said yes to something I wasn't ready for and grew into it. Ryan, 37, lived a quiet, predictable life in Leeds. He liked it that way. As a mid-level project manager at a logistics software firm, his work was structured spreadsheets, timelines, small meetings, clock in, clock out. Then one rainy Tuesday morning, just before his second coffee, his manager pulled him aside. Quick chat in meeting room 2? Ryan followed, expecting a routine status update. Instead, his boss leaned in with something unexpected. "We need someone to lead the international rollout next quarter," she said, fingers steepled on the table. "The client's in Copenhagen. You'd coordinate the regional teams. It's a step up, but I think you'd be good for it." Ryan blinked. "Me? You're good with people," she nodded. "Organized, calm under pressure. Think about it." His first instinct was to say no. He'd never led a team before, let alone manage stakeholders across borders. He'd never even been on a business flight. The idea of standing in front of a room of international clients, possibly older, more experienced, made his palms sweat. "I wouldn't know where to start," he said, but his boss just smiled. "You'll figure it out." For the rest of the day, the offer looped in his head like background music he couldn't turn off. Fear battled with curiosity. What if I mess it up? What if I surprise myself? That evening, he stood over the kettle at home, staring into the steam, heart pounding. He whispered out loud, as if trying the words on, "Yes." By morning, he typed a short reply, "I'll do it." He hit send before he could change his mind. The moment Ryan hit send, a wave of unease crept in. It wasn't excitement, it was pressure. Real, heavy, chest, squeezing pressure. That night, he lay in bed scrolling on his phone. How to lead a team when you've never led before. First-time leadership mistakes. International rollout checklist. His browser tabs multiplied. So did the anxiety. By the time his onboarding call with the Germany office came around, his palms were damp. He spoke too quickly. Forgot key updates. Called one of the team leads by the wrong name. After the call ended, he sat frozen, face warm with embarrassment. "This was a mistake," he muttered. "Why did I say yes?" Each meeting felt like a spotlight. He second-guessed every email. When someone asked a question he couldn't answer immediately, he'd spiral for hours. "They must think I'm clueless." He noticed himself apologizing too often. Insecure laughter at the end of sentences. Awkward filler words. He didn't just feel like an imposter who was convinced he'd be exposed as one. His calendar, once predictable, was now a maze of time zones, deliverables, and decision fatigue. He missed the comfort of routine, the familiarity of his old role, the quiet, and yet hadn't quit. Ryan sat at his desk with a legal pad, drawing 2 columns, what I know and what I don't. The second column filled fast. Acronyms, processes, timelines, cultural nuances. Even phrases like status sync left him wondering if he was doing things right. Instead of hiding from it, he leaned in. He messaged Tanya, a former team lead from 2 years ago, "Hey, I've taken on something bigger than I'm used to. Mind if I pick your brain sometime?" Tanya replied within minutes, "Of course, we've all been there." Their chat became a turning point. She didn't offer grand solutions, just quiet wisdom. You don't need to know everything. You just need to ask the right people at the right time. That advice stuck. Ryan stopped pretending to have all the answers. In meetings, he began asking questions instead of nodding along. "Can you walk me through how your team usually approaches this?" Or, "What's the biggest blocker you've seen in rollouts like this?" Simple shifts that opened doors. He enrolled in a short online course, Cross-Cultural Communication for Managers. It wasn't flashy, but it helped. He learned why some teams prefer written updates and others value real-time calls. Why some silence in a meeting isn't disagreement, it's reflection. His first win came unexpectedly, a thank you from a French team member for how clearly he recapped a client's concerns in an email. Another came when a Wednesday status update ran smoothly and on time. Bit by bit, the fear turned into footing. He still didn't feel like a natural leader, but he was learning to lead in his own way by listening, preparing, and showing up with humility. And that, he realized, was its own kind of strength. Just when Ryan felt he was gaining momentum, reality hit hard. It started with an email from finance. Subject: budget revision required. Due to unexpected cost increases, we need to reduce the rollout budget by 20%. 20%. Overnight, everything changed. Fewer resources, smaller travel allowances, less room for error. He felt the old panic bubbling up. The international rollout depended on careful coordination, now hamstrung by cuts. The next day, he compiled a revised project plan. The tasks he'd scheduled for in-person workshops now had to become virtual. He had to cancel a UK-based training session that executives counted on. His stomach twisted as he sent the update to the team. Sure enough, deadlines began slipping. The German office missed a critical deliverable because the local vendor wasn't onboarded in time. The French team couldn't test the integrations until the translation files arrived, files delayed by his new, lean communication schedule. Suddenly, every milestone looked uncertain. Then came the call from the senior manager, Ms. Patel, whose tone was less than diplomatic. "Ryan," she began, "this project is slipping. We can't afford delays. I need answers." He felt the old imposter fear. What business do I have leading this? But he didn't freeze. Taking a breath, he said, "I understand the urgency. Given the budget cuts, we need to reprioritize tasks. I propose we focus first on the modules our largest clients use, then roll out the rest in phase 2. I've outlined the revised timeline. May I walk you through it?" Ms. Patel paused, then agreed. He presented a clear 2-phase plan that balanced expectations with constraints. By the end, she nodded, "Make it happen, Ryan." That afternoon, he sent a message to his core team. "Team, due to budget cuts, we're shifting to a phased approach. I know this changes our scope, but it ensures we deliver the most critical features first. Please review the updated task list by Cobb, and let's meet tomorrow to adjust resources." He set new boundaries, no more trying to squeeze everything in with half the budget. He asked the German vendor to confirm whether they could extend payment terms and negotiated with the translation team to stagger deliverables. He also blocked out focus hours on his calendar so he could personally address the top 3 risks each morning rather than juggle constant emails. Within 2 days, the team was back on track. The German office completed their deliverable, the translation started arriving, and the UK-based training pivoted successfully to a virtual workshop. Progress ticked forward. Ryan felt something shift inside him. The panic still lurked, budget cuts were real, deadlines mattered, senior managers were watching, but he'd learned not to let fear control him. By setting clear priorities, communicating straight, and standing firm on what was feasible, he'd steadied the ship. He leaned back at 10:00 a.m. on Friday, watching the progress dashboard turn green on key milestones. For the first time, he saw that leadership wasn't about knowing all the answers but about making tough calls, realigning resources, and guiding the team through the storm. 3 months into the international rollout, Ryan paused at his desk and smiled, something he hadn't done since the very first shaky days. He no longer doubted every decision. He felt grounded. That morning, he joined a midweek check-in with the Tokyo office. The usual hesitation in his voice was gone. He greeted them in simple Japanese, earned through nightly language app practice. "Ohayo gozaimasu, minasan." They responded with warm laughter and genuine surprise. After the meeting, May, a senior engineer in Tokyo, pinged him on Teams. "Thank you for learning our greeting. It means a lot." Ryan realized that small gestures had built real bridges. He wasn't just a project manager, he was part of their team. Later, he hopped onto a call with the Sao Paulo office. He asked about their weekend football match, recalling details from a casual chat 2 weeks ago. The team beamed. It wasn't flattery, genuinely cared, and they knew it. For the first time, cross-cultural felt less like jargon and more like connection. Back in Leeds, he booked a one with Sophia, a junior analyst he'd noticed was quiet in larger meetings. He'd sent her some leadership book recommendations and offered to walk her through stakeholder mapping. Today, he asked how her first client presentation went. She brightened. "Much better, thanks to your tips." He felt proud, not as a boss, but as a mentor. Helping her grow reminded him of how far he'd come. Walking home that evening, Ryan reflected on the person he'd been before, saying, "Yes." Then he contrasted it with who he was now. Someone trusted by colleagues in 3 continents, someone who navigated crises with calm, someone whose voice carried weight because he'd earned it. He thought back to the moment of panic Googling leadership tips in bed. Now, those fears seemed distant. He had learned to ask questions, to listen, to adapt. Every misstep had taught him a lesson. Every small win had built his confidence. Stopping at a red light, he whispered to himself, "I didn't fake it, I became it." And that realization resonated deeper than any script or checklist ever could. Ryan steps off the tram just after dusk, the city lights of Leeds glowing around him. The international rollout is officially completed, deliverables met. Teams aligned, clients applauding the smooth handover. He breathes in the cool evening air, a genuine smile spreading across his face. I wasn't ready when I said yes, he thinks, but I grew because I said yes. His mind flashes back. The panic-filled nights Googling Leadership 101, the stumbles in the first video calls, the feeling of drowning under budget cuts and conflicting time zones. Yet here he stands, confident, calm, and deeply proud. He's no longer just the mid-level project manager who accidentally volunteered. He's the leader who earned his place through curiosity, humility, and persistence. Reaching home, Ryan opens his laptop. He drafts a short post on the company intranet and his personal LinkedIn. Say yes to the stretch, it's where growth lives. I wasn't ready, but by showing up, asking questions, and staying in the fight, I found I could become more than I ever expected. He adds the hashtags, hits publish, and leans back. The notification ding on his phone confirms his network sees it already, likes, and comments rolling in from colleagues and former classmates alike. He closes his eyes for a moment and reflects on the journey. The value of leaning into discomfort, of learning on the job, and of leading with empathy. He realizes that readiness is often a myth. What matters is the willingness to try, to adapt, and to keep going when things get tough. Moral lesson: growth doesn't come from being readied, it comes from showing up and staying in. CTA ending. Follow for real stories about stretching past your limits. Subscribe for weekly lessons in resilience and growth.